I've never asked anyone this next question. Hypothetically, say that I was sitting next to you in an airplane and we didn't know each other. We didn't have the history that we have. Do you think you and I on the surface would ever really get along?
Hmm.
That's Glenn Lundy, and we should not be friends. He's a Republican who is in the sales space and automotive. I'm in the marketing space and work primarily with healers and creatives, and laid in bed and cried the day Trump was inaugurated. True story. And yet, we're still good friends.
You and I are not necessarily like-minded, but we are like-hearted. There's very few things that we share a mind on.
Today, we're wrestling with one of the hardest questions that communicators have to face. How do you stand firm in what you believe in without closing yourself off from other people? From flat earth to ice, from AI to spiritual warfare. Buckle in, y'all.
We're going to say the T word, y'all, not trauma, Trump, even though for me, those are close to the same thing.
This is Glenn Lundy.
Glenn Lundy, you're sitting on an airplane and a complete stranger is sitting next to you and they look over casually and they say, "What do you do for a living?" How do you choose to respond to that?
I say, when it comes to what do I do for a living, I say I am in the training and consulting space. I work with owners and general managers of car dealerships all over the United States and Canada to help them scale and grow their businesses 800%.
And I've never asked anyone this next question in all the interviews I've ever done, but let's hypothetically say that I was sitting next to you in an airplane and we didn't know each other. We didn't have the history that we have. Do you think you and I on the surface would ever really get along?
Mm, I do think we would get along only because you are a compassionate, curious, kind person.
Yeah.
So I think that we could definitely get along as far as that goes, because I'm the same way, right? If I meet somebody, I'm gonna ask questions and I want to know more about what they've got going on, and I'm gonna dig in. Some people might say I'm a little annoying as far as that goes. So yeah, I think you and I would totally get along to an extent. Depends on how long the flight is and how long we kept talking before we started to uncover some things.
Depends what was on the news in front of us. Now, those of you who are listening, watching, and you're like, "What the hell, Heather? You've never asked a guest." And isn't that kind of rude to say, would you get along with them? Let me give you a little bit of backstory. So this man here I've known for several years, and he's one of my dearest friends in the world. And I love him tremendously, respect him tremendously. And we have the craziest ass conversations that I think I've really had with anyone, if not just very few people in my life. And the reason that we are able to have those conversations is we sit on different sides of the political fence. We have, I would say, you used to tell me this all the time that we had different personalities. I was like, no, we don't. But the more we have completely different personalities,
For sure.
um, values, religious beliefs, even I would say profession wise, there's not a lot of overlap, if any, in the work that we do. And so usually when people find out that one of my closest friends is a a guy in automotive who does sales training for GMs and is a Republican who voted for Trump and goes to church every Sunday. They're like, "What? What? What? What?"
Yeah,
But that's
very
the
true.
beauty of what today is going to be about because family, like we're in such a weird season. We People feel tension, people feel divided. I think there's a lot of confusion in the air right now because with that division, you kind of wonder where do I stand
Mm.
and how do I use my voice? And as creators and storytellers, it's tricky. It's tricky knowing how to show up. So having conversations with people who think differently than you, look differently than you, act differently than you, doesn't it give you leverage for your next point? It widens your lens to your own blind spots, and that's what Glenn's been for me in my life. Um,
I think one good way to
yeah,
describe it is that you and I are not necessarily like-minded,
mhm,
but we are like-hearted,
yeah,
right? We
yeah.
both have a heart for humans. We have a heart for impact. We have a heart for creativity, a heart for imagination, right? So I think we share a heart, but when it comes to sharing a mind, there's very few things that we share a mind on.
Let's get right into it. This is the thing that we've been wrestling with, and I think we've landed in different spots, and I think we have more wrestling to do with it. I want to bring in the listeners to this conversation is certainty and questioning, the power of certainty and then the power of questioning. So, if you could share a little bit where you're at in your life and give any history that you think is important for context to understand you, but where are you at right now in your life when it comes to leaning into certainty versus leaning into questioning?
Yeah, I think
We're 5 minutes in.
we're 5 minutes in. Let's go. I think that as far as like a little bit of history, I believe that I have been called in this life to be a bridge, right? My mom is white, my dad is black. I grew up in a very unique circumstance. My parents were divorced. My dad remarried a black woman. My mom remarried a white dude. And I grew up in an all white house and an all black house, and they were two doors down from one another. And so for my whole life, it was always, I struggled a bit with identity, right? My skin was too dark to be considered white, too light to be considered black. So I struggled with identity, and I would become a chameleon. Whatever environment I was in, I would adapt to that environment, and just basically take on those values, take on those beliefs, take on whatever. Fast forward, that was a good, like, there was a lot of good to that in my life. I've been able to create environments where everybody has a seat at the table. I'm able to have just as much fun at a rodeo as I can at a Busta Rhymes concert, right? Like, and everywhere in between. Um, and so there's been a lot of benefits to it. As I'm starting to get a little bit older, though, as you know, Heather, um, I'm starting to reach a point where it's like, okay, yes, let's question everything,
Mhm.
and let's have the intention of those questions to where we're going to land on something, right?
Yeah.
Like, ask questions to seek to understand, but at some point we need to land somewhere versus just constantly kind of questioning. I'll give you a random example, and this is some weird stuff that you and I sometimes talk about, but I'll give the listeners a random example, right? So it's like, and this is way out there, but I think it really captured what I'm trying to say here.
Oh, you're
Yes.
safe here. We are weirdos AF. You're good.
Well, like the flat Earth, round Earth thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Flat Earth,
Yeah.
round Earth thing,
Yeah.
right? It's like, okay, wait, let's start asking some questions, right? Let's start asking some questions. Why does NASA do things the way they do? Why do we only have a photo or two of the Earth from space? Why did they fake the moon landing? So we start asking all these questions, and it kind of leads you to, why is our experience of Earth different than what they're telling it is? And is that attached to a religious agenda, or is it not? Or is it there to create confusion? Right? There's a million questions, and I've asked of those questions. Um, I've asked all those questions, and I've come to a conclusion. And the conclusion that I came to is that the narrative and story that they are telling us is not real. Like, it's not right,
Yeah.
right? But I don't know what is. Like, what do I really land on? What do I believe? Do I believe it's flat and it's a plane and we've got Iceland, the ice walls on the side, and that there's land beyond that? I don't know that I necessarily believe that. I know that I'm just kind of still in a questioning stage on that particular thing. So I use that as an example because pretty much every aspect of my life, the last probably 10 years, has been that, where I'm asking questions and then I just land in this space of
I don't know.
no clarity, you know?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
feel like as I'm getting a little bit older, I need to be more intentional about okay, I'm going to ask questions, but we've got to land somewhere and stand on that belief once we get to the end of the questioning, which I think you and I kind of disagreed on that recently.
I don't I don't know that we yeah, we probably disagree on it. Probably. I think because I'm knee deep right now in, revisiting Napoleon Hill and, some of the manifestation stuff and intention and all of that. I'm just really drawn to the mystical world. I love it,
Yeah.
I do. I do. And one of the pillars in that is a level of certainty in belief. So those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you have you just create a state of being, and then you are able to become aware of your thoughts and be intentional with your thoughts, and then thoughts become actions, and then through that you develop a sense of certainty in belief. Like, right now I'm working on my body fat percentage, and so every single morning I'm thinking through, like, not just like, oh, my goal is to be at this body fat percentage, but I'm sinking into what does it feel like to be a woman with that body fat percentage. And that is me. It's not me one day, it is me now. And that being and that certainty, it creates the right actions because I've back to the identity piece, who you are. And so there's a level where certainty is so powerful when it comes to creation. I think where I get weary of it is certainty closing off learning with like things in this world. And so an example of this, we're going to say the T word, y'all. We're going to say the T, not trauma, Trump, even though for me, those are close to the same thing. The big T. Like, just to give folks background, like, when Trump got elected, or that day whenever he got sworn in, like, Glenn and I always meet on Mondays, and he looks like he is a child in a candy store, and your mom just said, "Have at it." Like, you are so happy. And I literally, like, just start bawling on the phone to him, and I literally, like, laid in bed that day. I couldn't even work. I was so depressed, and
Yeah.
um, I'm back to the certainty piece. In order to have a relationship with you, in order for me to learn and to grow, although I believe that that man is evil and I don't like him, I've had to let go of my rigid certainty in order to allow space to have a relationship with you
Hmm.
and to hear your side of things, which
Hmm.
I've grown from. Do
Hmm.
you see what I'm saying? So
Sure.
I just threw up on you. Come back at me. What do you think?
Yeah, no, a couple things around that, and that really was an interesting time during that election for you and I. That
It
was
was a
a
test.
it was a test. I think that's a good way to put it. It was a test of our, because you and I had a belief that our relationship was strong enough to be able to really stand on opposite sides of that election. And I remember when you asked me, you said, "What do you think is going to happen?" And I'm like, "I think this is going to be a blowout. I
Oh,
think it's
don't
going to
bring
be
that
over.
up.
I think it's going to
You
be
just like
over.
being right
I think
about.
it's going to be over tonight," because everybody was saying we're not even going to know for like a month. And I'm like, "Nope, this thing's going to be over tonight." And I remember you coming back going, "How did you know that?" And I said, "Heather, your feed and my feed are
Completely
completely
different.
different feeds, right?
Mhm.
I live in a completely different world than you live in when it comes to those type of experience, what we're being fed from the media. And I think that really was the piece that helped us, is we were able, like, you were sharing some videos that you were getting in your feed. I was sharing videos that I was getting in my feed so that I could understand, why you were going down a certain thought path or a certain thought pattern, like training your kids up, right? Got the kids to where they can run a mile just in
Yes,
case
sir.
we got to run. You were talking about moving. I think you were going to Puerto
I still
Rico or
wanna
something
move.
like
I
that.
still want to.
You were talking about moving,
You know
and
that
it
man's
was
not gonna
like,
leave the office, dude, so
well, and it's like, when I can put myself in your shoes, even in those tiny little clips that you send or that I send, I think that helps. Um, because sometimes you're just like, I don't understand how someone could think like this. But if you can live in their world for just a little bit, then you can do that. You can get an understanding of why somebody thinks the way that they think. So that was just a really interesting season, I think, for you and I.
Yeah.
to go through. I think it really strengthened um, the fortitude of our relationship, and it opened doors to where you can tell me the truth and I tell you the truth, as subjective as the truth can be in today's day and age. And it makes our relationship stronger. But when it comes to the certainty and the clarity piece, that we're talking about, I think for me, just the season of life that I am in right now, it's not, I'm not saying like I need to land somewhere and then block out all other ideas, concepts, or whatever. I'm saying I need to land somewhere so that I know what I'm fighting for when it comes to my family, when it comes to my business, when it comes to the next however many decades of my life that I am blessed to have. I need some solid footing to be able to stand on, still have open conversations, still be in rooms with people that don't look like me, walk like me, talk like me, still ask lots of questions and be curious. Um, but be able to look myself in the mirror, right? Most importantly, be able to look myself in the mirror and say, yeah, Glenn, this is what you believe and this is what you're fighting for and this is why we're getting up every single day. Because I think, Heather, you can get to a point sometimes where you're just so, not you specifically, like
Sure.
me, right?
I
Like
get that.
you get to a point where it's like you're so wishy-washy that it almost makes it hard to do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're just stuck in this swirl of I don't know what to do because I don't know what I believe.
Yeah. And I'm not, this conversation, I don't necessarily think that there's going to be, a solution. We've been wrestling with this type of thing for at least a year now. I think what comes up for me when you talk about that is, where is the line
Yeah.
where certainty does not closes us off to relationships and causes labels? Because, like, I agree with you. It's important to understand what you believe, to know what you believe and understand why you believe it. But we live in, and I don't know if it's this culture only or just the world, but where it is celebrated. You're passionate. You're a passionate man. You're a warrior, you're this and you're that, when you can dig your ass in the ground and you
Yeah.
become sturdy and you become an asshole. Not you, but
Yeah.
it's so woo, woo, yeah, look at him go, when people become so certain in something that they start labeling people. So, um, you know, there could be a people group that one side thinks is living in sin and the other side thinks it's all good, and we can't objectively circle around the issues of that with an open mind and have conversations. Instead, what we do is we label that. And that's where I get weary about it. Like, how are you planning on, this is deep, sorry, but how are you planning on being certain, but also to not running to a label when you meet somebody that certainty contradicts? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that it does make sense. And it's a skill that I will have to navigate and have to learn, right? Like I'm already open. I can have conversations with anybody, whether we agree or disagree is totally okay. Um, so like I can do that. But I think that's really a skill. I think actually what comes up for me when you say that is I think of Jesus, right? I probably need to model and mirror and study Jesus even better than I probably have in the past because he knew exactly what he stood for. He knew exactly what he
Mhm.
believed.
Mhm.
He spoke with strength at all times, but that strength also was filled with compassion.
Right.
And he spoke with strength when he stood in front of the adulterous woman that everyone was getting ready to stone. Right? He spoke with strength while still having compassion for that particular woman. Um, he spoke with strength and yet still had compassion when it came to, you know, the acts of many of the people in the church and so on and so forth. So for me, I think that's where my energy is kind of going right now. Is it's like, how can we have strength and compassion? Because
Mhm.
I feel like the second piece, it's like you said, right? This whole bro culture, like the compassion piece is what's missing. Everybody's got the strength piece down.
Yeah.
Like they can
Yeah.
scream from the rafters and the rooftops and, you know, whatever, fight, 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 right? Like all that. They got that part down. But the compassion part, I was blown away, Heather. I think I mentioned it maybe on the show. I was blown away when, you know, if I'm going to watch news, I don't watch news, as you know, but if the news is going to be on in the past, it's going to be Fox News, right? Like
Yeah.
MSNBC, CNN, all those guys. I couldn't do it, right? Because of the political, you know, ways that I sway versus how you sway. And so, but on Fox News the other day, this woman was like, they were talking about the No Kings protest,
Mhm.
and the main commentator lady, I don't know her name, but the main commentator lady, she was on there, and there was a guy in the streets at the No Kings who was interviewing people, and he interviewed this really heavy set woman, and she was angry about whatever it is that she's angry about. And the commentator came back on and said, I'm pretty sure that woman's just angry because she missed a meal today. And I was like, whoa. When did because I don't really watch the news, right? Like, when did the news become a place where we can talk like that? Like,
Wild.
how does that woman even have a job? Like, that's not journalism.
Mhm.
That's just straight up hate. And then I've seen it more and more now, like calling people losers and this and that. Like it's almost like kids on the playground just saying the meanest things about other people, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think that's the answer to your question, Heather. A little bit long-winded, but how do you do it? Find a way to walk with strength and compassion.
Yeah. They. Old them. There's something else going on, and, this is where I land in this conversation is there's a thing underneath the thing, and the thing that we think is a thing is not the thing, but we're tripping out over that thing when really there's something else. And that's why I struggle with certainty about the thing because what is that anyway?
Mm.
You following me? I know that sounds weird AF, but
Mhm.
there's this issue. Heather Parody should not be drinking Diet Mountain Dew, and I'm sorry, but I have been lately. I'm trying to eat healthier, and it's like my sinful thing that I do because
You look like a spokesperson for them right now.
I don't, this is it. So here's the issue, and we could have strong opinions about the Diet Mountain Dew, which, by the way, I'm not arguing with you. I'm wanting to learn and grow. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh,
here's
you
my counter argument to that. You can say, yeah, that's not good for you, and be certain about that. And I can be like, yeah, it is. Me and you could sit here and go back and forth about it. But really, the issue underneath it is I feel like I need to have a bad thing in my life, a bad treat in order to be happy. And that's really the root issue. Why do I feel like that? Why can't I be satisfied drinking water? So there's a thing underneath the thing. And I think where I struggle with making stands on certain issues, I don't know if I've publicly come out and made stands on issues. Been super tempted to. I just don't feel like arguing with people. Um, that's not the point. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And there's a they, and we haven't figured out what a they is, but there's something at work. And if you look at the Bible, it talks about, our spirit is not flesh and blood, it's principalities, peace, kings, demons. I don't know. I
Right.
jacked that scripture up. But there's a spiritual thing going on where it would like nothing more than for me to hate you and you to hate me.
Mhm.
And it's like, unless we get to the core of that, that's really the only thing that's real to be certain on. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that what
24 minutes in.
I think that what you're saying is true. Let's start there. I
Yeah.
think that what you're saying is true. I think that there are things far beyond our limited understanding, right? We are unfortunately human in so many ways, and the expansiveness of God, of the universe, of spirits, of the spiritual realm. It's I don't even think that I just don't even think our brain has the capacity to process. Right? I have fish in my fish tank over here, my saltwater tank that I love, and I don't believe that those fish could even imagine the expansiveness of the world, right? They're just kind of in this box and this is where they live and this is all that exists. They don't know anything about breathing air. They don't know anything about any other type of existence other than what's right in front of them. And so I think that, yes, this is true. What you were saying, that there is something that is much, much bigger that we don't understand, which could lead to a second truth being that the thing that is the thing is not really the thing. Totally align with that. And we still have to live and function on this plane
Hmm.
and in this realm. Though there is something much bigger that we can't process and understand, and the things that are the things are not really the things, though that is true, it doesn't change the fact that we are operating and interacting in this thing.
Hmm.
And so I can't grasp all of that. And I'm feeling as I'm getting a little bit older that I do need to kind of get a grasp of some of this. Um, there was a interview with Steven, Diary of a CEO, and Modot. I forget his last name. I had a conversation with him, through Instagram, though. What a nice guy, this Modot. I can't remember his last name. He used to work he was the head of Google's AI.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, incredible guy. Messaged him on Instagram, messaged me right back. We started sending voice memos back and forth, like
That's
just
cool.
incredible. I mean, this guy charges $50,000 for a 30-minute Zoom. Um, like,
Holy
like he's such a big
Spirit.
time keynote guy, and he was just responding back and forth. But they were having a conversation, and I thought he said something that was really interesting. They were talking kind of about simulation, simulation theory. Are we in a simulation? Are we not? So on and so forth, right? And for those of you, maybe, simulation theory is that, like, we're virtual goggles type thing. Um, we're playing within a simulation, like the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know that we're in the simulation. And so they were kind of talking about that, and they brought up a really good point, like, because Stephen was like, who is they that created the simulation, right? Like,
Hmm.
who is that? If we're in a simulation, who created the simulation? And Modot was kind of like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're in it. You're in it. Whether you want to
Yeah.
be in it, whether you're not, no matter who created it, you're in it. And
Yeah.
there are rules that apply in this simulation. There is pain, and you don't like pain. That rule applies. Whether it's real or not real, the rule applies within the simulation. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it, Heather, is that, yeah, I agree with you. There's some way bigger stuff going on that we don't necessarily understand, but I don't think it changes the fact that we are human in flesh on this plane with experiences. There's some rules to the game, and I need personally myself a little bit better understanding of which of those rules I need to maybe, make sure that are keeping me on track with what I feel is my purpose in life and for my family.
What's so frustrating about talking to you is I do agree with almost everything you say. Like, I hear you. You know what I'm saying? And it pisses me off because I'm like, I don't want to agree with you on that, but I do. I do. And something we've talked a lot about too is, our role as communicators. So anyone listening to this show is using their voice in some way, whether it's through their art or they have a microphone like you and I have or whatever. And so figuring out your role as a communicator, living with conviction and passion and not being wobbly, as you said earlier, and also understanding that there is a spiritual issue going on and remaining compassionate and open. And I don't disagree with anything that you've said. And also, it's like, how do we do that while also being open to hear and to see? Prime example, the ice situation,
Yeah.
like, I don't think we've ever talked about that and it doesn't matter, but that's something that just I am so it just breaks my heart what's happening, and it makes me so angry with the way that Christian people have responded, like cheering for these people being dragged away.
Yeah.
Um, and it just it's disgusting to me. And so as a communicator, I, want to speak out and use my voice about that. But then also, you want to be able to hold space to understand that the issue is not ICE. The
Right.
issue is not even Trump. The
Right.
issue is there is just a demonic thing going on in our country where we have dehumanized people. We
No
don't
doubt.
see human beings. We see a color. We see a nationality. It's a deep rooted, disgusting sickness that we have, and it's being manifested through what's happening with ICE. And so, as a communicator, yes, we want to use our voices and say, like, hey, this is an injustice. Our children will be ashamed of us one day that we will let this happen.
For
But
sure.
then also be spiritual enough where you're saying, what's the root issue here and
Mhm.
are we addressing it? And that's where it gets frustrating, because when you go into that spiritual level, you know, we even systemize that to where it's a Christian versus non-Christian thing. And we don't have enough time in the day to talk about that. But you hear what I'm saying? So that's something else Glenn and I have wrestled with, like our role as communicators. And, you use your voice every single day, and a lot of people look up to you. You have this daily morning show, all that's been mentioned in the intro. How are you wrestling through that right now?
Yeah, it's
32
definitely
minutes in.
it's definitely a challenging piece, right? Like in your specific example, with the ice thing, there is a complete dehumanization that has happened and that
Yeah,
is continuing to happen through that. It does not look very much different at all than when I look back in the late 50s and then in the 60s in the civil rights movement.
correct.
People getting hit with, black people getting hit with hoses and hot coffee poured on them and drugged through the streets and separated from their children and hung from nooses and all of those things, right? If you look at the imagery from back then and the imagery now, it's very similar. It's just a different colored skin. It's a brown skin versus a black skin. And so you see that, right? And it's truly unfortunate. And on the other side of that, it's like, okay, so how do you solve that problem? Or is it a problem? I don't know. I do know that I have a fence around my house, and I have a dog that lets us know if because I don't want, like, I want to protect my family and I want to know that my family is safe, right? And so when I scale it down to an individual experience, I know a lot of people have ring alarm systems and video cameras and so on and so forth, and people don't want strangers or potentially criminals or whatever on their
Yeah.
property. They just
Yeah.
don't, on an
Yeah.
individual level. So then how do you do that at scale when you're
Yeah.
talking about a country, right? Do you need to draw a fence around it or do you not? I don't know. There's some bad people out there, and at the same time, there's people in really unfortunate situations that we need to help get out of those situations. And so for I think that's why these political things get so heated, is because there's no gray, right? Everyone wants it to be black or white. Like, we're either gonna, treat them like dogs and throw them out, or we're
Right,
gonna let them in, right? And
right,
it's
right.
like, okay, well, maybe there's some other solutions. Maybe instead of dehumanizing those that are backpacking for miles with their children on their shoulders, through the deserts to try to get up from Mexico into the United States. Maybe we need to start talking more about, like, what kind of policies could we put in place to where we could maybe spend trillions of dollars in Mexico boosting their economy versus spending trillions of dollars at war with Iraq. Like, maybe there's a better utilization of funds where there wouldn't be all of these people trying to get out of these countries, but actually they would be able to thrive where their countries are. Nobody's trying to come into the US if they're in a good spot where they're at. So maybe, I don't know, but that's kind of the more been my feeling. And I tried to share some of this on my show last week, and some of it hit, I think, and some of it didn't. But it's like, how can we go upstream and start having different conversations that actually solve the problem in the future versus just picking a side and creating additional problems?
But that's what scares me about certainty. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I hear you and I feel like I am certain on issues, but in order for you to come to that conclusion where it's a yes and you can hold space for two truths to have elements of truth in them and circle around something and have more of a holistic view, it requires you to, not that you don't have an opinion, but that certainty to be loosened a little bit where you become open. But when we say that, I think a lot of radical people, not you by any means, we wouldn't even be friends if
Yeah,
this was
yeah,
you, but radical people get nervous about that because there's an element of control within certainty. Do you know what I'm saying? If I
yeah.
can't control this, then I'm scared of it because, you know, I want the power. And also, we need to have certainty because you don't want to go away. So it's like this weird balance thing.
It
You know
is.
what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
and that's where I think it's just easier. It's easier to go one way or the other. It's easier to close your eyes and smoke some weed and do some shrooms and say the universe is going to come get me. It's easier to dig your feet in the ground and hold picket signs and yell and scream and cuss and block everybody. It's
Right.
easier to do one of those two things. It's so much harder to sit in a space where you can go yes and.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why I value having these conversations with you. It's been hard. Like, some of the things that you say, it's hard for me to hear, but we've been able, only through years, been able to communicate where I'm sure you get pissed at me sometimes and you've hurt my feelings and blah, 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 blah. But we don't do that. You're the only person I know who I have that with, who thinks
Yeah.
differently than me. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
anybody listening, I'm curious, like, your thoughts of, like, how do you open yourself up to other opinions, and not be threatened by that? You know what I mean?
Well, I think that even, like, if you go early in our relationship, so this relationship almost didn't happen,
Yeah, I
right?
got mad at you.
You got really mad at me, and the relationship we took a break, right? For lack of better words, but the relationship almost didn't happen, and it was only out of because I had so much respect for you, who you are, and what you bring to the table. Like like you said, it would have been easier to just write off Heather Parody, and it would have been
Mhm.
easier for you to just write off Glenn Lundy. Um, but I was having an event, and I wanted the audience in that event to be exposed to you and who you are and what you bring to the table. Um, and so it's just out of this, like, supreme level of respect. And so I invited you out to that event,
I
and
did not wanna come.
you did not want to come, but you did.
You said do you remember that conversation? You're like,
I
"Heather,
do.
will you please come?"
Yes. And then you came and you spoke and you impacted. And while we were there in the same room, in the same environment, right? Once we got there, then we were able to, with truth and honesty, we were able to clear the air on some things, and we were able to forgive. You were able to forgive me for some things that I had said and done, and there was grace, right? So I share all this because I think that it's not easy, like you said, and it does take work. But I think it really starts with just being willing to respect people. Like if we could just have respect for other humans, even
Mhm,
if we disagree with them, even if we maybe don't like them, even if we're mad at them, if we can still just be respectful, then being respectful could maybe potentially open a door that could get us into a room, that could give us an opportunity to be honest with one another, that could give us an opportunity for grace, because it ends in grace, right? But it starts with having respect. And I think that's what the media has done a phenomenal job of doing. I think that's what many people, right? That, many people, let's just say people, I think that it's become okay to not respect another human being. And as
mhm,
long as you don't respect them, you're never going to sit at a table with them. As long as you don't respect them, you're never going to share a room with them or a stage. And as long as you don't respect them, you're definitely not ever going to be honest with them and sit down in truth and offer grace.
mhm. I don't know if you were taught this growing up or not, but I was taught in the church that whenever you become radical for Jesus, you need to cut out anybody in your life who does not follow Jesus because you don't want them to tempt you. And it was this fear of you being drugged down. I remember even at church camp, they had us stand on these picnic tables, and one of us would stand on top of the picnic table, and one would stand at the bottom of the picnic table. And they say, which one's easier? Is it easier to pull this person
What
down,
is it?
or is it easier to pull them up? And we're like, pull down. They're like, that's right. That's why you don't need friends who don't love Jesus. And the only reason you would ever be a friend with someone, the only reason you would have a relationship was to have a transaction, to save them. And I lived in that world for a really long time. And I feel that's still in my DNA, just because it was the way that I was trained. And so it's been really difficult to learn how to, we talked about this the other day, love and accept someone exactly where they're at without an agenda for
Yeah.
them. And then also not be afraid that their Republicanness is going to
Rub
rub
'em.
off on you.
They're cooties.
You know what I'm saying? And so
Yes.
I don't know if you feel that way, but like sometimes, the people you roll with, your audience, the things sometimes you say or whatever. I joked with you the other day, but I'm like, am I the bad influence on your life, in your opinion? You know what I mean? But it's silly. We're grown ups now, but that's what we were taught as young kids. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Eric Thomas, E.T., the hip hop preacher, him and I had a conversation earlier on in my kind of speaking career as I was speaking in different places and so on and so forth. And I asked Eric because that's one of the things I teach, right? Like your environment matters. The people that you're around matter. If you're around a bunch of negativity, you need to cut that shit out, right? Like
Right.
it's one of the things that we kind of teach. But I was talking to Eric because I got invited to speak at an event that I did not align or agree with the guy who had asked me to come speak. Um, I knew that he was kind of a bad
Democrat.
dude. I just knew he was kind of a bad dude, and I knew that he surrounded himself with bad people. Um, and so I asked Eric. I said, "Hey, Eric," but at the same time, it's I'm trying to get my speaking career. I'm trying to get stages. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get some
Yeah.
cash.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "Hey, Eric, what do you do if somebody asks you to speak at an event and you know that necessarily like these are not your type of people?" And Eric said something to me I'll never forget. He said, Sometimes you are called to be a light in dark places. And when that's the case, first make sure you are fortified and strong and don't bring anyone with you. And I was like, ooh, okay, elaborate. And he said, if I'm going to speak at an event and I know the people and I know that, I can trust them and their integrity and all those things, he goes, I posted on my social, I invite
Mm.
everybody. Hey, I'm coming to
Yeah.
speak here. I'm coming to speak here. He goes, but if I get asked to speak in an environment where I don't necessarily trust, he goes, now it's my responsibility to go into that room and be a light because God might be able to use me to help save some of those. But I don't bring anybody else with me because I don't know their fortitude. I don't know if they've done their work, right? So I think that when you share that, that's kind of what comes up for me is it's like, yeah, you do need to be really careful of the people in your environment and you got to kind of fortify your walls and make sure you're strong enough to be able to not get pulled down because other people can pull you down if you're not strong enough. But don't lead other people astray, if that makes sense. Um, if you're going to go down into those areas, then don't take anybody else with you. That's a solo mission.
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and also, um, it's
Comma
still comma,
and comma.
yeah. Uh, if I approach my relationship with you and my dad, who votes like you do and thinks like you do, and other people I care about, of like, I'm going to be a light to them, that's still agenda based, in my opinion. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like,
that's
I
true.
hear you from like if somebody's like in a really unhealthy place and not morally sound and yada yada.
Sure,
But
sure.
when like you said, lightheartedness, that's where it gets to me a little more um confusing, maybe, of loving and accepting
Yeah.
people fully without trying to influence them. You know what
I
I'm
think
saying?
it's a really impactful thing to be able to move in, especially in this relationship, to be able to move with zero intention. Like I think it's super hard.
Dude,
Like
dude.
I'll catch myself, right? I'm like recently a buddy of mine, had a big win with his company and so on and so forth. And right after I get off phone with him, I'm like, hmm, maybe I should,
Mm,
maybe I should take him to dinner or something like that. Like I'm
yeah,
all of a sudden
yeah,
I'm starting to think I should get closer to this person.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
I'm having to go, wait a minute, bro. Like, stop thinking like that. That like you were friends with this person when they didn't have nothing.
yeah,
And that relationship doesn't need to change now that they can benefit you in some way, shape, or form. But it's very natural instinct,
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
to like what's in it for me,
Mhm.
right? And I think it's hard to not walk like that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's what's been cool about this, you and I. It's like you and I just roll, bro. We
Bro,
roll. Like
we roll. There's not many people I could, record and publicly share a conversation this, personal? Personal would
right.
be a good word,
Yeah.
and your willingness to not just privately, um, let me poke at some of your ideas and thoughts, but be willing to allow me to do that publicly says a lot about your character and who you are. And I just love and respect you so much. And thank you for being my friend. Thanks for coming on. And I hope this conversation, folks, um, challenges you to open your eyes and your arms and your heart to people who it would be easier to close that door to.
Yeah.
Um, please and thank you. Last question for you before we get out of here.
All
What's
right.
something that has been it's the worst question to do in 1 minute on your mind lately related to this or something else
Yeah.
that you have a big question mark around?
Yes. The answer to that question would be, and I touched on it on my show just a little bit this morning. This whole AI thing, as you know, when it comes to AI from the very get-go. I've been the one like, let's go. This AI thing is super, super cool. Come on, Heather, get in here, Heather. We had lots of conversations around the AI stuff when it was
Oh,
first
yeah.
coming out, which was amazing. And I have just really like, I talked to a guy. I don't know if I told you this. I talked to a different buddy of mine, and he 2.5 years ago, he saw Chat GPT and was like, "Oh, this is crazy." And then he thought, "Oh my gosh, I wonder if we could," right? Like he was in one world, but then he just was like, "I wonder if we could." And then he actually contacted a guy who was the head of AI at a university and said, "Hey, do you think we could?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, we could probably like figure that out." And 2.5 years later, he just found out yesterday that his company is now worth $200 million. 2.5 years, $200 million company. And I was just like, holy crap. We both jumped in at the same time. We both had the same aha moment. What was the difference? Because my company didn't grow from nothing to 200 million in the last 2.5 years. And so here's what I come to the conclusion. I came to the conclusion that I have been looking at AI and asking myself, how do we integrate this into what we're already doing? How do we integrate it into our training? How do we integrate it into our email boxes? How do we integrate it into our, our platforms and our whatever, right? How do we integrate? Whereas he was looking at it, how do we innovate?
Mm-hmm.
Integrate versus innovate. We've been integrating and have had some success. He innovated and blew off the charts. So that's the biggest question that I have now is, how can I take this passion and excitement that I've had around the AI world for the last 2.5 years that I've been pointing towards, this is what we already do, just how do we make it better? And how can I now point it towards, I want to connect AI to imagination versus connecting AI to my CRM.
Podcast number 2 coming up later. I will link down in the show notes if you enjoyed Glenn. There is a life-changing show that he hosts at 5:30 a.m. live every morning, Monday through Friday on Facebook. It's called Rise and Grind, and he's been doing it faithfully for as long as I've been alive, pretty much. And and if you
Wow.
don't live Eastern Standard Time and you want to catch replays, it's on his Facebook. It'll all be linked down below. It's a powerful, powerful show that have watched every single episode of, which is a lot of hours of Glenn in my life. So
It is.
you talk
Thank
about
you for that.
certainty. I can still be certain in my beliefs after I've listened to so many hours of you.